Welcome. I'm Barbara Call, Senior Director of Content Strategy and Operations at IDG, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webcast titled Talent Pipeline Issue Hindering Digital Transformation Initiatives, and brought to you by IDG, IDC, and Udacity. I have three speakers joining me today. First up is Jennifer Dearman, Senior Vice President, Global Customer Success and Operations at Udacity. Jennifer has more than 25 years of experience as an advisor, thought leader, speaker, and executive in the customer success field. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Barbara. Great to be here.
Also joining us today is Cushing Anderson, Program Vice President, Consulting, System Integration, HR, and Learning Services at IDC. Cushing is responsible for managing the field research and custom research projects for IDC's IT Education and Skills for Digital Transformation Research Program. Welcome, Cushing.
Thanks, Barbara.
Also joining us is Sean Fitzgerald, Research Director for IDC's Worldwide Digital Transformation Strategies Practice and responsible for IDC's Small and Medium Research Practice. Welcome, Sean.
Hi, Barbara. Thanks for hosting today.
And now I'll hand things over to Sean to kick us off.
Thank you, Barbara. Digital transformation is the single largest business shift since the Industrial Revolution. And while we've been talking about digital transformation for the last 5 to 10 years, it's only just getting bigger, and more and more investment is being made around it because companies recognize that they have to transform. So I think it's important to start with, well, we talk about digital transformation, but what do we mean? And here at IDC, we define it as transform your decision-making with technology. And that transformation is really about the new business models that have data at the center. The decision-making is really about using that data to create evidence-based cultures. And then obviously being able to do that with speed, scale, and agility over time requires leveraging third platform and innovation accelerator technologies. And what we see is that over the course of 2021 through 2024, direct digital transformation investments around hardware, software, and services is expected to be about $7.8 trillion of direct investment. That's growing at about 16.4% compound annual growth rate during that period. And in contrast, non-digital technologies or traditional ICT technologies are actually expected to contract slightly over that same period. So understanding digital transformation and what it means for your organization, as well as allocating the appropriate levels of investment, is a really important first step towards taking your digital transformation journey. And you may be asking, well, why do I want to transform? Why is transformation so important? At IDC, our own research also shows that companies that have successfully digitally transformed see almost twice the amount of revenue and profit performance versus those that have not prioritized transformation. And even if you're struggling and in the process of transforming, you're still seeing improved levels of revenue and profit versus companies that have not made digital transformation a priority. Now, that said, very few companies have reached full or mature states of transformation, at a little less than 4% of companies. And what we know are companies that do successfully transform have three really common sets of attributes or dimensions. And that is, they have a single business strategy for digitally transforming that spans the enterprise. Beyond the strategy, they've actually developed a roadmap that engages both technology, people, process, data, and governance in order to undertake that transformation. So taking it from kind of the idea of strategy to those operational capabilities across the organization. And that they're also investing in what we call a digital platform or a fully integrated technology architecture for supporting the digital business. So digging into the element of strategy a little further, our own research has shown that only 37% of organizations are what we would describe as digitally determined, meaning they've got an integrated digital strategy that fully mirrors the business strategy, or digital is the business strategy. And actually, a little less than 2/3 of all companies do not have an overarching digital strategy, or they're operating in a very tactical way. And those organizations are what we would call the digitally distraught. In addition to strategy, having a roadmap that takes you from the strategic intent or goals from the executive suite into operational capabilities really requires a roadmap or a plan in order to implement your digital transformation efforts over time. We also see the best companies that successfully transform and or undertaking that transformation today actually utilize a use case approach for their transformation, where they break the overall strategic goals and strategic pillars and priorities and programs into very chunkable use cases or project-based efforts. And they also then take those efforts and they put them in the dimensions of what do I need to do today? What do I need to do or think about in the midterm, Horizon 2, that builds on the foundational efforts that we've undertaken at the beginning of our journey? And then Horizon 3, what do we need to think about, or what are those next level capabilities that we want to aspire to as we move across the digital transformation timeline and capabilities build out? And then the third element that I mentioned earlier was the digital platform. It's really critical that you're investing in technologies that enable those digital capabilities to scale, repeat, and improve on a daily and regular basis. And the four tenets of what we see in a digital platform is that it's a cloud-based API set of strategies that orchestrate exchange of data. It utilizes an agile application architecture. It's really about the new customer experience that's built out of the intelligent core and insights that you're gaining about your customers, products, the various markets, and how you can enhance those experiences. And as I said, it's really that intelligent core at the nucleus of the platform. And in traditional change management, we used to think about those elements of people, process, and technology. Well, with digital transformation, you really need to add data and governance as the fourth and fifth dimensions of change management, because again, digital is very much about a data at the core, new type of business model and engagement. And governance is really critical because digital is inherently complex and you need an effective governance model and framework to manage all that added complexity beyond traditional change management efforts. And quite frankly, a lot of companies are struggling to, again, become successful digitally transformed enterprises. And what we see in our research that the top 5 areas companies are struggling with over the next 18 to 24 months include things like tactical plans, silos of innovation, siloed initiatives where, you may be doing some transformation of one part of the business, but it's not well understood in the context of what the rest of the business needs to do. Outdated performance measures, KPIs, measuring traditional things like revenue and profitability and not thinking about digital measures is another big area of opportunity. But what's really interesting is that if you kind of dig down at the root cause as to why you have all these challenges, it really comes down to people. So not only you got to have the right people, you also have the right skill sets. And what we see is rounding out the top 5 areas is this lack of or limited digital transformation expertise, capabilities, and skill sets. And so in the area of telecommunications, when we think about what does that transformation look like, we really think about, what do you want to do as a telecommunications provider? Well, you want to support and enable diverse connected communities. And so how do you do that in the context of that use case approach to transformation? Well, you think about, okay, I want to have omni-channel commerce. I want to think about omni-experience customer engagement. I want to create a digital supply chain that's optimized. And I want to create operational scale and agility. And from that, you develop the appropriate programs and use cases and then think about what do I need to do first, second, third, et cetera. And that's where we look at, what do I want to focus on in Horizon 1? What do I then build out from Horizon 1, leveraging those investments with Horizon 2 types of efforts? And then what do I want to evolve to in Horizon 3 as I develop and advance more and more digital capabilities? But it really comes down to having the right people, the right skills, and most importantly, being able to create this training capability that supports this evolution of digital in the telecommunications space. And to talk a little bit more about the importance and value that comprehensive training, provides to organizations as they try and become digital players in the market, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Cushing Anderson. Cushing?
Thanks very much, Sean. We've been talking about digital transformation, but as we know, digital transformation has lots of different technological components, but they all seem to affect organizations the same way, and they require organizations to adopt them in a very similar way, especially these large overarching things. For the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to spend my time talking about cloud adoption, but I hope you'll allow me to use that as merely an example of the kinds of technologies that an organization might need to develop and deploy, whether it's a digital supply chain or whether it's analytics or cloud adoption. All of these things there are going to be these stages of adoption. We envision cloud journeys having, say, 7 stages. Organizations pass from one degree of adoption to the next, and rarely do organizations retreat to an earlier stage or maybe even skip a stage altogether. In our research, we asked organizations to identify which of the 7 stages of cloud adoption they were in and where they expected to be over 2 years. We asked cloud managers and IT leaders around the world in North America, Europe, and Asia, and they had all of the leading cloud services providers were represented. We had folks who used AWS or Google or HPE or IBM. We also conducted in-depth interviews with US and European IT leaders who had implemented cloud to understand their experiences and get their recommendations. Our research showed that about 60% of organizations are using cloud for one or more workloads at stages 5, 6, or 7. Only about 5% of organizations have no interest in cloud computing. That's at stage 1. No matter where organizations are in their journey, most expect to leverage cloud services to support even more workloads in the future. In fact, 70% of organizations expect to expand their use of cloud over the next 2 years. However, investment in training seems to impact how quickly organizations are able to adopt the cloud. That suggests that they'll get more rapid value out of their cloud or technology investments. Comprehensive training seems to enable organizations to move more quickly through the stages of cloud adoption. Over the next 24 months, organizations that are only minimally trained on cloud will lag behind comprehensively trained organizations in how much they expand their use of cloud. Comprehensively trained organizations are 81% more likely to move up a cloud adoption stage in the next 24 months. But the impact also matters depending on what stage of adoption the enterprise was in. But let's first talk about what we mean by comprehensive training. Sean mentioned processes and technologies, governance, data, and talent. And that's a similar way to think about the kinds of things that are necessary for an organization when they're providing comprehensive training. They need to think about the topics of training, and a variety of topics need to be presented. It needs to be the technology of the platforms. It might include methodologies or new processes. It often includes the organizational objectives and strategic intentions of the initiative. But it also can include the potential uses of technology and other alternative business strategies to give all of the learners in the organization an understanding of what might be done or what could be done, the art of the possible. But comprehensive training also focuses on who might get the training. It's sometimes easy to focus the attention of a training organization on the IT organization, possibly, or maybe the implementation team. But in fact, the broader the organization can expand its training access to include individual team members, teams of IT members themselves, non-IT employees, and even groups of related teams in other lines of business, the more widely organizations can distribute their training, the greater the business benefit that they're getting out of their technology investments. The increased rate of adoption for comprehensively trained organization really depends on where an organization is in its cloud adoption journey. But training helps at every stage of adoption. 100% of comprehensively trained organizations that are currently at stage 2, just educating themselves on cloud, expect to move to stage 3, have firm plans, within 2 years. That's compared to just 25% of those minimally trained organizations. So comprehensively trained organizations are 4 times more likely to move from stage 2 to stage 4 having plans in 2 years. That's really important to be able to make that leap. Similarly, 67% of comprehensively trained organizations, those with this great and robust training programs that are currently at stage 3, evaluating the cloud approach for a specific workload, expect to move to stage 5 using cloud for 1 or 2 workloads in 2 years, compared to just 11% of those that are least trained, those minimally trained organizations. That's 6 times more likely. And finally, 85% of well-trained organizations that are currently at stage 5, that use cloud for 1 or 2 workloads, expect to move to stage 6 using cloud for several workloads or having a cloud-first kind of strategy, cloud for everything, within 2 years. That's compared to just 45% of those minimally trained organizations. That's twice as likely. So organizations that train well move more quickly through these stages. And you can imagine if your goal is to use these technologies more widely or get them deployed because there's business benefit to successful deployment, being able to move through those stages more quickly can result in greater value from those technologies. So comprehensive training improves an organization's ability to achieve those internal objectives. Comprehensively trained organizations are more productive. They're 4.7 times more likely to agree that cloud can improve IT staff productivity. They're better problem solvers. Comprehensively trained organizations are 3.5 times more likely to believe that their teams can solve new problems. And they're more cost efficient. Comprehensively trained organizations are 4 times more likely to agree that cloud can help optimize IT spending. So if you're trying to get the most out of your digital transformation programs, training the IT staff on how to leverage technology and training the line of business and others on what the technology can do will increase the value you can get from your initiative and will speed your transformation. Let me hand this over to Jen to talk about how Udacity has seen this work.
Thanks so much, Cushing. And to follow on to your point, comprehensive training is definitely a best practice that Udacity leverages with our customers for that very reason, to help them accelerate their digital transformation initiatives. But what we see and hear from our customers is that there's a significant talent gap, specifically in advanced skills like data science, machine learning, and AI. As digital transformation accelerates, the talent to drive it just won't be there. Upskilling is not only more cost-effective than hiring. Studies show 94% of employees will stay longer at their jobs if their employer invests in training and development. So investing in learning benefits everyone. From a telecommunications standpoint, though, telco companies are leaders in using AI to create more efficient operations. Think things like chatbots and also leveraging massive amounts of data. They compete for talent and they are ripe for upskilling teams at scale. But industry-wide, they're seeing declining revenues from voice and text services and increased competition from over-the-top platforms, as well as ever-growing customer expectations. And this is all resulting in a need to pivot to more promising business models and leveraging emerging technologies like 5G, IoT, AI, data sciences, things like that. Telenor has been a Udacity customer for a number of years. And to tackle these business problems, their CEO has challenged more than 30,000 employees in 12 countries to carry out 40 hours of training and education annually to transform their workforce for the digital future. And they've developed Telenor Expert Academy to bridge their digital skills gaps. So far, Telenor has upskilled over 700 employees in cutting-edge technologies, and they've avoided $9 million in hiring costs by choosing to reskill their workforce. They've also completed more than 3,200 real-world practitioner-level projects, which translates to real-world skills as well. These successes have resulted in increasing the efficiency of existing machine learning models by 40% using deep learning, reducing data pipeline setup from 5 days to 2 days using Airflow, and seamless transition from server to cloud due to upskilling of engineers in cloud computing. So some really amazing and transformational results at Telenor just by focusing on upskilling their existing workforce. Barbara, back to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I have a couple questions for the group. My first question is for you, Jennifer. What are some of the skill sets that will be required in the future?
Great question. So Udacity's mission is to train the global workforce in the careers of the future. And the future is now. We're seeing it across all of our customers. We see data science and AI growing in importance as companies look to accelerate their digital transformation strategies to reduce cost, increase revenue, and mitigate risks. And we are constantly evolving our nanodegree course content to ensure we are providing cutting-edge training as technology advances.
Sean, what are your thoughts here?
I absolutely agree with Jennifer's observations. And in fact, I talked about taking a use case approach to digital transformation, and IDC's own digital transformation spending guide, which is, built around that use case approach as well. We see artificial intelligence and big data analytics in over 90% of use cases where these are two key enabling technologies for business outcomes and business success. And to put that in a little bit of context, I said it at the beginning of our session today that less than 4% of companies have fully digitally transformed, yet these two tech areas of AI and big data analytics are overwhelmingly represented in the transformation technologies. Can you imagine when 96% of those that haven't fully transformed are looking for those same talents and resources and capabilities, which frankly aren't there today? It's going to get even more difficult and more expensive to try and hire or develop that talent. So it really reinforces the fact that you have to have not only a comprehensive training approach to upskilling and reskilling your existing workforce, but continuous learning needs to be core to your culture if you want to be a successful digital entity over time.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean. Jennifer, another question for you. How do you ensure that staff are offered the right courses for their level?
Yes, so this is an important question because our learning paths align nicely to the stages of adoption that Cushing talked about earlier. We structure our nanodegrees following a comprehensive training approach in a way that enables learners of all levels to be successful and learn and grow at their own pace. We have a prescriptive approach, so we ensure we match learners with the appropriate course level, starting with a skills pre-assessment. And the assessment helps us determine where a learner should begin in a specific learning path, so we know they are on the right track right from the beginning.
Excellent, thanks. Cushing, what are your thoughts here?
Well, it's an interesting dilemma to figure out who should take a particular class or a particular course or a particular curriculum. But one successful strategy that I've seen in several organizations is they more widely open up their learning library to allow the whole organization, or at least large swaths of the organization, to actually self-select into the kinds of learning that are most in need at the organization. So if an organization is trying to become like Telnor is, to develop out its machine learning capability or its analytics capability, to not simply focus that curriculum on those targeted folks in the IT organization or in the data science organization, but often those courses up beyond that, into finance, into sales, into logistics, into products, to allow any individual access to that kind of course. What that does for an organization is it uncovers pockets of talent that may not have been kind of where you expected it to be. You might find that the marketing organization happens to have a particularly strong analytics bent, or that the sales organization has been using rudimentary artificial intelligence to help them do segmentation for clients. But by allowing them to take these classes, you can identify where the talent lies. And you might even find a pipeline of talent that helps you ease the transition and find access into new skills in the organization. It also creates a very motivated workforce when individuals can take the classes that they know matter to the organization and allow people to move into opportunities that align with their capabilities and that are important to the organization. So this is called pull learning, and it helps organizations kind of get more value out of their learning organization by opening up the classes to as wide a group as possible and just see who takes the classes.
All right. Thank you, Cushing. Jennifer, one last question for you today. What makes Udacity different from other online learning platforms?
Well, there are a number of things like the quality and completeness of our content that we're really proud of. But looking beyond that, I think we've all probably taken an online class that was a series of videos with a multiple choice test at the end. We call that lean back learning. We believe that the best way to learn is by doing, especially when learning deeply technical skills. So within each course of our nano degrees, we have hands-on projects built in, and learners are required to pass the projects in order to move on to the next course in the nano degree. Now, the beauty of this is every time a learner passes a project, they've acquired job-ready skills that can be applied immediately, even before they've completed the full nano degree. And to assist our learners with their projects, we have a global network of mentors to provide feedback and answer questions along the way. So a human touch applied to our learning process. And so with Udacity, you get real employable skills using project-based active learning at your own pace with the help you need when you need it.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. That was great. That's all the time we have for today. I'd like to say thank you to my speakers, Jennifer Dearman of Udacity, Sean Fitzgerald of IDC, and Cushing Anderson of IDC. And thanks to you, our audience, for joining us. For additional information on this topic, please visit the resources section on your screen. And thanks again for joining us. For IDG, IDC, and Udacity, I'm Barbara Call.